Recording. And I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and then if y'all could just let me know if it looks a-okay. Cool. Can y'all see? Good to go. Awesome. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna minimize this. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to just drop them in the chat, and we'll keep an eye out on everything because I would like to save a few minutes for Q&A, or we can ask questions in the integration circle as well. Okay, so we are here for integration, micro dive. Integration is such a complicated word, because when I hear that word, especially in the beginning of my journey, I was like, oh, what does integration mean? I didn't even know for quite a bit. And it's a different definition for everyone. There's a different way to do it as individuals. So that's what we're going to be diving into today, discovering what integration means for you, because that's what's important. Yes, you can go get, resources and learn tools, but it's about what works for you. And before we dive into it, just so we're clear, we always like to share this disclaimer. Psychedelics are classified as illegal substances in most jurisdictions. TRiPS does not encourage or condone psychedelics where they are against the law. Any information we provide is for informational and educational purposes only. Gotta say that, so we're all safe. Moving on. Why are we here? Because sometimes I feel like that. And I'm wondering, do other folks feel like that too? When we go into these realms and interact with these sacred teachers, these molecules, these, even plants, right? Because cacao is not a psychedelic, but it is a powerful teacher that I work with and does require still focusing on that integration piece, because plants can be really, really powerful just as much as psychedelics. So, expanding our consciousness, it touches a lot of areas in our life, right? And integration is not a one and done thing. It is a living process, right? Something that we live and breathe. And I personally believe that for myself, I'm going to be integrating until the day that I check out, because there's stuff that happened years ago that are still unfolding in present day. It's also understanding today, getting the understanding that it just needs to be what works for you. It's not something that's linear. And sometimes, we're figuring it out as we go. So integration essentially is what helps us take a big experience with ayahuasca, mushrooms, even just life in general, taking that experience and the insights that come up, all the things that come to surface, and starting to find an understanding of how it belongs in our life, right? And this is where we can, take some time to slow down, reflect, and respond to what's changing, what's coming to the surface with care. And just a quick recap, some of the psychological effects that we can have when we're working with sacred medicines, psychedelics, entheogens. That's going to be altered perception, expanding our consciousness, big emotional releases, right? Sometimes we've been holding on for stuff for quite a long time, and stepping into um, that realm with these sacred teachers can put us in a position to where we can like separate ourselves from what we've been carrying for a long time and have a different look at it. Some people go through that ego death, right? Sometimes mystical and spiritual experiences can happen. And of course, as many of us know, what is time? Especially in that space. So, what is integration? Integration is the process of making meaning from an experience and bringing what we learn into everyday life. It is how those insights, those gems, as I like to call it, specifically with mushrooms, that homework that I'm getting, and taking that homework and allowing it to become something that unfolds in my daily life, something that I can live day in and day out. It's not just, let me take a step back. At one point, early on, especially being uh, in tech, I have that analytical, logical brain. So sometimes it's like all theory. It was all theory for me early on, but that theory needs to be put into action, right? We get that knowledge, but what is knowledge without action? So this is where integration comes in and helps us really shape our relationships with self, our relationships with, the environment, Mother Earth around us, relationship with, relationships, food, just how we really take care of ourselves. And I do believe that it hits multiple areas in our lives when we get out of these big experiences, those areas being mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and relational. And again, for me, something that I had to learn over time is that integration doesn't always happen right away or as fast as I wanted to, right? So how can we be okay with that process of the unfolding? And sometimes that unfolding is something that we don't know what it's going to be like, right? It's that mystery of the experience, not always having all the answers, and understanding that with these medicines that we interact with and sit with, they're intelligent. They know a lot more than us. So we're working with an intelligence that isn't always going to be really direct. So, yeah, sometimes it takes a while for things to unfold, days, months, weeks, even longer. Um, just to give you an example, I'm still integrating a very specific experience from September 2024, and it is August 7th, 2026. It's still unfolding. So, what integration is not, I think it's really important to, as we talk about what it is and what it isn't. Not having all the answers immediately, not forcing meaning too quickly, not chasing the next experience. Again, this is something that I'm speaking from my own experience. And I do hear from time to time other people hit that third bullet point, but definitely early on, um, it can be a quick, slippery slope to just want to go to the next experience, which can be really, really harmful, overloading our nervous system when we chase peak experiences over and over again, right? Um, it's not a one-time event, right? So I would like to invite everyone to allow it to be like Play-Doh, our experiences, right? It's just like molding, it's forming. And even though we're like, this looks kind of crazy, it's still how it should be, right? It doesn't need to be a perfect square or a perfect triangle. It's just like that that juicy Play-Doh unfolding and shaping and morphing into our picture, our journey. Right. So yeah, you want to be mindful too, because sometimes something else that can I see a lot in the space is again going back to like the next experience. Oh, I just did mushrooms one day, going to the next experience. Having that time in between those experiences is really, really key and really, really important. You can do a lot in that space. Because when we get out of these experiences with, again, these teachers, these molecules, our brain is open, that neuroplasticity, right? That is such a key time to like really make some impactful changes in our lives. And this is why it matters. Those insights that we receive in our journeys can fade without support. A powerful experience can open us up uh, to a lot inside of us and outside of us, right? But that opening is not the same as change. So we don't want to continue to go in these ceremonies and continuing to open up without embodying and really making that change and using the information that was coming to the surface from our time. Without integration, it can be really, really, really harmful, and we don't want that. Especially, as this community that we build here in TRiPS, insights can fade, right? Big experiences can stir up a lot of emotions, memories, and questions. This is really all about self care. Transformation needs care, reflection, and practice. And integration is that bridge to continue your journey and continue to embody that change that might have came up in life, not in life, in that ceremony state that you're in, and just really, make some big changes in your life towards like patterns, habits, again, ways of relating. And integration matters because it helps us stay with what's surface long enough for something real to shift. It's that bridge. And in Pittsburgh, we have a lot of bridges. So, we're going from the Liberty Tunnel to downtown. All right. So, quickly here, um, what might be getting integrated, right? There's a lot of things, as we kind of covered already, that can come up in our work that we engage with psychedelics and our sacred earth medicines. So, new emotions, memories, body sensations, spiritual insights, relationship patterns, right? Identity shifts, grief, confusion, discomfort, and just like that inner knowing that something needs to change, right? And integration, I personally feel it's about creating space for all of that to move through. Because sometimes it can be uncomfortable when we come back into this 3D world after we get done working with these molecules, these sacred medicines. Sometimes things can be um, uncomfortable, right? Intense, and there's no need to rush, right? So sometimes a person might be integrating clarity around a situation. I know personally for me, that experience that I mentioned in 2004, September, it was around an intense grief that I was carrying with the loss of my father. So yeah, I'm still integrating that day in and day out. Sometimes, again, we when it comes to like the body sensations, our body keeps a score, right? So sometimes we're integrating a new body response, a new memory, a new relationship truth, and just again that inner knowing that something needs to change, and all of that counts. So as I mentioned earlier on, integration, in my opinion, is different for everyone. So here's just a list of some things that can be a part of your integration process. Journaling after a session or ceremony, reflection, rest, right? Creating that space for you, prayer, breath work, meditation, dancing, any type of like movement, somatic practices, creative expression. So art, painting, yeah, just really, you can say gardening, right? I found gardening to be a really neat integration process for me that I was not aware of until about a year or so ago when I moved in, started cutting my grass. So that was like really, really cool. You can also get support from integration coaches as well, therapists that I believe are psychedelic friendly. I think that's really, really important. Trauma informed therapists that are open to you talking about your experiences, because the last thing that you would want to do is find a therapist that does not support your expansion of your consciousness in the ways that work for you. And just really small shifts in habits, right? Sometimes we need to tighten up our boundaries and our choices. That's all a part of integration. Sometimes it looks like writing, sometimes it looks like crying a lot, sometimes it looks like sleep. It can be active or quiet, expression or stillness. Integration circles, super, super helpful. I think what I'm trying to relate here is that what's important when it comes to integration, the important part is staying in relationship with what came up, right? As it unfolds. We want to stay in that relationship. So I read this book. In this book, they gave a few analogies of integration because I found as an integration coach that I also had to make up my own way of explaining what integration means for me to like really embody that. So it's not the textbook definition, but I do like this example. So I wanted to share it with folks. Integration is a puzzle piece, right? Integration can be like adding a new piece to a larger puzzle, and that experience may reveal something important, but that one piece does not always explain everything immediately. And sometimes it takes a good while to understand where that new puzzle piece that emerged from our ceremony or time with the medicine and see where it fits. Sometimes adding one piece can change how we see the rest of the picture. So we need to take some time to like analyze and process that and not always rush to the finished project. Sometimes with that new puzzle piece, we might be we might need to just hold that piece for a good bit until the larger picture becomes clear, right? Again, taking that time and having that patience, which for me is something that I'm constantly working on. Because one experience can definitely shift our understanding of our past, our patterns, our relationships, and our sense of self. So, yeah, I encourage you all to think about integration in the process of like adding new puzzle pieces to our entire whole self, our puzzle. Just a couple of memes. Marion, thank you for the inspiration. And shout out to Tricycle Day. When everyone's chasing altered states, but no one's interested in altered traits. So you see the line of folks, which happens quite a bit in the space, of folks going to ceremony after ceremony after ceremony. And there's no line for integration support. Uh, and to that, I would like to caution everyone, if you do think about exploring these states at like a retreat center or with a facilitator or on your own, if you're working with a facilitator or working at a retreat center, ask them what is their process for preparation and integration? Because you do have a lot of retreat centers, a lot of facilitators working with folks that are just still staying in this another ceremony, another ceremony, another ceremony, and not doing the integration for themselves or for the people that they are working with. So it's really, really important to always be thinking about prep, ceremony, and integration. And the prep is really, what we covered in our first two educational webinars, Psychedelics 101 and Set and Setting. That is that prep. There's a lot of homework and big change that I personally feel that can happen in that first period. The ceremony, in my opinion, is a big but very small piece to the journey. And then that step afterwards, which is the integration that we're talking about right now, another huge piece that I encourage folks to pay attention to and really show up in. I personally believe that these medicines, our journey started when the second we had that thought, oh, I want to go sit with mushrooms 3 months from now. That's when I personally feel the work starts happening and the journey starts happening. And then, yeah, it is discombobulated face when you take the psychedelics but skip the integration. That's what it can feel like sometimes. Like, what the hell is happening? And we don't want that. So I have a few more slides. I do see it's 7:30, so I'm gonna try to go through these really quickly. We don't have too much more to go. So some of the common pitfalls, right? These are some common traps that people fall into after a meaningful experience. Um, Rushing to explain everything or just labeling everything right away. Another one, making huge decisions while we're still activated from our experience. This is the story that you will commonly hear. I went to ayahuasca in Peru. I came back. I sold everything, divorced my family, and I'm moving to wherever to become a shaman. Like, we want to pause. I personally think that when it comes to make major decisions, give yourself at least 30 to 60 days to just kind of sit with it, navigate, and really see where that's going to affect, or what areas that's going to hit in your life. Because that time, things can start to settle, right? So definitely want to give yourself space before making big decisions too quickly. Um, Comparing our process to others, right? Sometimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, I didn't get the spiritual experience that this person got. Maybe something was wrong." No, your experience is the one that is meant for you. So would love to encourage folks not to compare your process to somebody else's, right? Um, Yeah, let's see what else we have here. Looking for one final meaning. I think things just continue to unfold, and it's best for us to be flexible, fluid, right? With that Play-Doh that is coming to the surface, and mistaking intensity for transformation, right? This can happen. I personally believe a lot in when working with Fab and Mio in Bufo. Um, People are having really, really big experiences and not doing the work afterwards for the integration. And then also trying to do it all alone. Tap into community, tap into peer support. It doesn't have to be an integration coach, but finding a society and just making a bond with folks that can understand and relate to what you just experienced. It might not be the exact same thing, but just having that common ground definitely helps a lot. Um, Something else that I think is super important to note is what you might hear called dark night of the soul. This can be a really challenging period. So the dark night of the soul is when things are just feeling like really heavy. Um, confusing. We might be feeling depressed, sad, a lot of, dealing with a lot of grief. Dark night of the soul happens to a lot of people, especially when working with psychedelics, sacred earth medicines. And sometimes integration can be feeling really disorienting, heavy, and unclear, right? That grief that I personally experienced were old identities, beliefs, habits starting to fall away, right? I'm grieving the death of my old self, but still making space for the new Quest, the new Jonathan that is emerging. And that can be a really, really sad process. Um, Sometimes in a dark night of the soul, solitude is what we need, right? And just remembering that hard seasons don't last forever. These changes that we were used to, patterns or beliefs or habits might have served us at one point, but now we're in a state where it's time to let go and make some changes. So, we can grieve that death of our old self, our older version. And a dark night of the soul does not mean that something is wrong. It just simply means, in my opinion, something is old, breaking down, and we're going through that grieving process, right? It's a process, and sometimes can be really, really hard. So if you have experienced this, I just would like to encourage folks that, if you ever feel overwhelmed, shut down, um, excuse me, feelings of just like, damn, when is this going to end? Tap into support. Support is there. Support is there. Support is there. Again, with integration circles, community, or integration coaches, just, get the support that you need. All right, we just got a couple more slides and then we'll go into the circle. So pace, discernment, and our nervous system. Again, micro dive. When things are coming up to the surface, give yourself time. Not everything needs immediate action, right? Grounding yourself matters. After an experience, spend some time with Mother Earth, going to the forest, going to the water, putting your feet in the grass, just really like laying on the ground, getting some sun. That can be really, really grounding in our integration process and just help us come back down to earth so we can really take our time with what's coming to the surface, and allowing that clarity to come through, because after that big experience, we might feel activated. We might feel ready to go and take action right away. Give yourself time and go at a really decent pace for yourself, right? Get some rest. The nervous system, I wrote down the nervous system here because it does matter, right? If someone is really um, feeling activated, flooded with emotions, right? The first, or even just coming out of a ceremony, sometimes we can feel like, damn, that was like a really big process. I'm feeling sad. Give yourself time and allow yourself to just regulate for safety, and um, give yourself that space to just make decisions from a supported place. Okay, that's really, really important, because integration can sometimes be action, and sometimes it could just be having patience and sitting and allowing things to unfold. So, as we start to come to a close, just some questions that I wrote down to offer some reflections as we start to get ready for our integration circle. What feels most present for me right now? What feels most present for me right now? Um, what am I still processing? What am I still processing? What feeling, lesson, or truth is asking for my attention? What feeling, lesson, or truth is asking for my attention? And if there is a feeling, if it's in your capacity, where do I notice that in my body? Where do I notice that in my body? And then, last but not least, what kind of support do I need right now? What kind of support do I need right now? And just to recap, here's a list of tools. We covered quite a few that I like to offer for integration, journaling, time for reflection, breathwork, meditation, movement, body awareness, dancing, art, creative expression, nature, and rest, nourishment, really taking care of your body with some really healthy foods from the earth, uh, tapping into community, integration circles, trauma informed therapy, hopefully with a therapist that is okay with the use of psychedelics, integration coaching, and peer support places. There's a lot more tools that can be added onto this, but again, it's about finding out what works for you. Sometimes that might be working out, sometimes that might be gardening, sometimes that might be dancing, sometimes it might just be screaming at the top of your lungs. If it works for you, that's what matters. And the last thing I will say, integration can be a phase for, I think, our entire lives, not just the moments that we worked with psychedelics, sacred medicines, right? If I go through a breakup with somebody, what's happening afterwards is going to be integration of the new self that's coming to the surface, going through that grieving period, right? Um, yeah, and just, okay, what did I learn from that process? What changes do I want to make so I can be in a better position for the next person that I meet in my life? Integration, I think, can be applied to a lot of areas in life, not just the ones that we have, not just the experiences that we have with sacred medicines and psychedelics. So, a couple of resources I wanted to mention. These are free integration circles. So TAM Integration is a company that Marin and myself have been a part of for quite a while. I was hosting the psychedelic integration circles that happens on the second Wednesday, but I'm no longer there. But Daniel Shankin is there, and he is a great integration coach. I actually trained with him. There are also women integration circles that happens on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then there are the art integration circles, which I believe Marion leads the second Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Our time. I also co-facilitate the Kindred BIPOC Circle on the third Sundays of every month at 2 p.m. with my good medicine sister, Charlotte James. And I am also the facilitator for the 5 integration circles. This integration circle is specifically focused on 5-MeO-DMT and BUFO, and that is bi-weekly on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And then I listed another resource that I personally went to, Lucent Counseling. They are having an integration series happening on Friday evenings at 6:30 p.m. in Dormont, PA. I would just check their website out because they do have a series, and you just want to make sure you need to register before you just appear. And that is with a good group of therapists that understand what this space is like. They are really good people. So with that being said, I thank you all. We ended it around like 35 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A, stop the recording, and go into our integration circle if we don't have any other questions.
Some great advice, Quest. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's fantastic. I think definitely something that I take away from it is just giving yourself time after an experience and not expecting that you're going to have all the answers or that you're going to have things figured out right away, and that's okay. I think often in this world, we tend to want everything right away, want the easy solution, want to know how we feel. And psychedelics are teachers, and sometimes the teaching takes a little bit. So I'm really resonating with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Then how about we just go right into circle? Yeah, cool. So I always like to just name a few agreements. What we talk about is stays within the circle. We won't share that outside of the circle. When folks are sharing, let's imagine that they have a talking stick. And since we've got about 40 minutes or so, um, if you do feel called to share, if everyone wants to share, you don't have to. You can also just sit back and listen. But if you do feel called to share, just for the sake of time, try to keep it in like 3 to 5 minutes or so. And after you are done sharing, I always like to just open it up for reflections or feedback if that person is open to that. Feel free to say no, right? Because some people just want to share from their heart and not hear any reflections or feedback. But if folks are open to that, that is our time to chime in with a reflection or feedback that came up for us. And just speak from your own experience. You know, I went through something like this. This is what comes up for me, and let's focus on that person that was sharing. And once they are complete, we'll just go to the next round. Next person. Share from the heart, and yeah, let's be in love. So I'm going to shut up now and open it up to who feels called to just share an experience. What's going on? Forgot to mention this is the awkward silence that always happens at integration circles before somebody starts.